Welcome to another Holistic Home Journey live Q&A session. I'm your host, Crystal Kanata, and I help parents break through generational cycles of the traditional yell, shame, hit, punish type of parenting by offering mindset shifts, judgment-free support, and tangible tools to help you parent in a more developmentally appropriate and holistic way. So today we are doing Q&A. The way this works is if you are a member of our official community, off social media community, you get to submit Q&A questions all week long. And then on Thursdays, usually I come on and answer them live. This week is Thanksgiving, so I am live on Wednesday. I'm going to go through all of the questions that were submitted in advance. I always guarantee that I will give you an answer. And then if we have time, I stick around, and anybody who's watching live is welcome to ask their questions then. So let's just dive right in. First question is from Marissa. So Marissa says, how do you use respectful parenting with a baby? Any books, resources, or anything that you recommend? I started my respectful parenting journey about 2 years ago when my now 6-year-old came to me and said, I don't like when you spank me. Why is it okay for you to spank me when I get in trouble? My heart melted, and I've been working on it ever since. It took me a while, and I'm still learning how to gentle parent and not be permissive or authoritarian, not hitting, but still yelling, screaming, and not being respectful. I'm excited to be able to raise my baby in a house where the entire family is working towards being kind and respectful to each other. So, believe it or not, I haven't read any of the popular parenting books on this topic. A lot of what I talk to you comes from what I talk to you about comes from my own personal growth journey and me taking the lessons that I'm learning in personal growth and saying, whoa, why am I just now in my 30s learning to be respectful to myself? Why am I just now in my 30s learning to set boundaries, right? And that's where I have a history of some psychology work, but most of what I'm talking to you about is really coming from that place. So I have seen other creators post book lists, some that come to mind and some that are actually even on my Amazon wish list right now are like Whole Brain Child, No Drama Discipline, How to Talk So Little Kids Will Listen, No Bad Kids. I'm probably forgetting a bunch. What I'll do is let me write this down. I will make a list in the resources, the articles and resources tab in the community, and I will give you a list of books to check out. As for like doing this style of parenting with babies, the thing with this style of parenting is that it's not really something that you do so much as it's something that, like, it's a lifestyle. It's a way of seeing your children. It's a way of building the connection with your children, right? So when you have a baby, they're not going to understand a lot of the conversations that you might see happening in skits across the gentle parenting community on social, right? It's not going to work the same way as it does for your 6-year-old. But I always say, get in the habit of still speaking to that baby in that way. So even though they're not understanding, when they get frustrated and they're throwing a tantrum or something at 6 months old because the toy isn't working the way they thought the toy was going to work, they might not understand if you go over and you say, oh, that's so frustrating. Do you need some help, or do you need space, or whatever you're going to say to them? But you will understand, and you will get in the habit of reacting that way when they're having big feelings. And your 6-year-old will see that you are consistent in how you interact with the members of this family. If your spouse gets frustrated about something, or your 6-year-old or your baby gets frustrated about something, you are calm, you are stable, you point out their feelings, you offer solutions, you offer to just be there for them. And that stability across the household will make the kids feel a lot more confident. So Marissa, but I'm so happy for you. And I know I was just speaking with somebody about this yesterday, a woman who actually like raised her first child, is now like 15 years old, in very traditional parenting styles, and is now switching over to her 2-year-old and using more holistic parenting styles. And there's always a little bit of guilt there because you wish you did it that way for the older one. You almost feel bad that the older one didn't get this version of you. But just know that you making the change now, they're going to see that. They're going to see you can make mistakes and understand your mistakes and learn from them and do better, right? And they are going to see you model how to interact with their little sibling, and that will carry through in the way that they interact with other people. So I know it can be really overwhelming. I know there can be a lot of guilt around it, but I'm really, really happy for you, Marissa. Okay, next question is from Katie. So Katie says, my mother-in-law had my 6 and 3-year-old overnight. My 6-year-old said grandma yelled at her and was tearful talking about it. We're still trying to make changes here, but how can I handle this with grandma? I don't know how she said it, but this was our conversation. She had posted like a photo. I can't obviously show you, but she had posted a photo of like their text conversation, and she was basically saying like, "Hey, did you, yell at her?" She said that you yelled at her, and then grandma comes back and says, "Yeah, I did yell at her, but only after I told her 3 times about touching something. I can't remember it." So I have. Katie goes on to say, "I have a lot of trauma from physical and verbal abuse from my grandma and even parents, and don't want my kids having that. My husband is still having a hard time changing." And then Katie updated us a day or so later and said, "Grandma spoke to the 6-year-old and said, I think you just got your feelings hurt because I yelled at you. I think because you guys talked to grandma into letting you stay up late." So, a couple of things going on here. You have the grandmother speaking to the child, yelling in the moment about something, right? You have the child being upset about grandma yelling, right? Then you have grandma saying, "Well, I yelled at you because you did this." And so, what I would do, the mindset shift here is grandma is in charge of her own emotions, and grandma is in charge of her own behavior. So, if the kids convinced grandma to let them stay up late, okay, first of all, grandma was in charge then. Grandma made the decision. She needs to own that. I made the decision to allow the children to stay up late. Now everybody's tired and grumpy. So when I had to ask the child to not to touch something 3 times, guess how I'm going to react out of grumpiness? Fine, but grandma needs to own that. Grandma needs to own, I let the kids stay up late, not 6-year-olds, you made me let you stay up late. I raised my voice, not you're overreacting because you're just upset that you got in trouble. I decided to make these decisions and I decided to act this way with my emotions. That's the first step. That's the mindset shift that should happen separately with grandma. Hey, listen, I know things get stressful. Sometimes even I yell. But after that happens, it's really important for the connection if you can own up to the way that you handle the situation and also give some specifics of how the child could improve what their piece of that situation was. So for instance, child is touching something, grandma yells, "Enough, stop touching it, get in your bed," whatever she yelled. Child's upset. Grandma, who is the more mature person and developmentally mature person in that scenario, should approach the child and say, "Listen, let's take a breath. I'm sorry that I yelled at you. I shouldn't have yelled at you. But that doesn't change the fact that you shouldn't have kept touching that when I told you not to. So next time, I will work on my anger and I will work on the way that I express my anger. I should not have yelled at you. And next time, I need you to work on your listening. Okay? If I tell you not to touch it, that means don't touch it. If you want to touch it, you just have to ask me, Grandma, I really wanted to touch this. And then we can talk about it." That's how you each assume the responsibility, and that's how you keep the connection, and that's how you make sure that you are not invalidating the child's experience. And it will make the child just feel more confident and more safe going to grandma's house. Okay, so Kathy asked, how do you prevent tug of war starting when you try to take a toy away after not listening and not playing properly? My toddler is very strong. If I take something away, she pulls it back with all her strength, and I really don't want to just grab it out of her hands like that. I do try staying calm and not raising my voice, and I try to explain that mommy has to take it away now because you're not playing safe with the toy. I did give her a warning that I will take it if she continues that behavior, and also say we can try to play with it again later. Trying to hold my boundary without losing it, especially when it turns into a game of tug of war with my toddler. Any suggestions? Yeah, so that's all too familiar and common, right? So you are trying to set a boundary with the toddler. You're like, listen, you're not being safe with this toy. If you continue this behavior, I'm going to have to take it. You try to enforce that boundary by saying, okay, well, now I have to take it. And now you go to grab the object, and the toddler is tug of war with you. And now it's a game. And now the next time that you say, if you behave this way, I'm going to have to take that object. Guess what? The child doesn't care if you take it from them, because taking it from them is the game, right? That's really frustrating. So the way that I always handle it is I try to have the child be in charge of like what needs to happen with that item. So for instance, and it really depends, I don't think you gave me an age. No, it depends a little bit on the age, of course. I would say by around 2-ish, this would be effective. Younger than that, you can redirect. But for instance, if child is throwing the ball's going to hit something in the house. We can't be throwing the ball in the house, whatever your boundary is. Listen, if you throw it again, I'm going to have to take it. Okay, child throws it again. All right, come on, bring the ball over here. And I would help the child bring it and put it. This ball is going to go here. If you want to throw something, you can have this. I think that's the key there, is giving them another way to meet the need. So you're saying you're not really making the big deal about the fact that they're losing this thing, which can sometimes be hard for our ego, right? Because if you said, if you do this again, you're going to lose it. And you thought that that was going to make the child not do that thing. And so when the child does the thing and loses that privilege, you almost want it to feel like they paid for it. And this could be happening completely, like not even consciously. You're not trying to be vengeful, but just be mindful of this, right? So now the child's losing this toy, and now you're like, well, I told you you were going to lose it. You see what happens when you don't listen to me? We fall into that. When we fall into that, there's this power struggle, this power control. But if instead you said, okay, that's it, we can't play with this anymore. Come on, we're going to put this here. Instead, you can throw this ball outside. Instead, you can throw this toy at that pillow, right? You teach them how to meet the need. If you want to bang something, you cannot bang on this. You can do this instead. I would even give them that option before it gets to the point of you having to take the object. But once it gets to that point, I would try to redirect, almost like swap it out with something else. See if you can have the child be in charge of putting the thing away. Okay, we're going to keep it here. It's going to stay safe here, and we'll use it later. And make sure that you are not in that mindset of, I need to make them pay because this was their punishment. It's not about punishments. It's about, what's the reason that they can't play this way? Is there a real reason that they can't play this way, or are you just being triggered? If there is a real reason that they can't play this way, they're coloring on your wall, which you don't allow, or they are playing in the kitchen while you're cooking dinner, whatever, something unsafe, then you can redirect them to meet their need and still keep that safety. Even if you do have to take away whatever toy they're playing with or whatever they're doing, you can do it in a way that is meeting their need. They're not in trouble. They're not punished. It's just, you're crossing a boundary and I can't allow that. And that's it. Sometimes even just changing that tone really helps. Okay, next question, and actually last question, is from Brianna. Brianna says, any advice to a mom about to have 2 under 2? I'm so nervous for how my son is going to react, and I'm extremely worried I won't have much patience for the both of them. So Brianna, let me tell you something. Full transparency. Okay, so we started trying to get pregnant with Emma probably when Zoe was about 2 or 2.5, and probably even sooner, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, we wanted to have the kids closer together, and they wound up being like 3.5 years apart. And to this day, I'm like, thank goodness I didn't have them closer together, because it is hard. It is hard, even when there's a little bit of a bigger age gap. It's hard at all levels. And the reason why I'm telling that to you is not to discourage you, but just for you to know that even if somebody doesn't have the exact same age gap in their kids as you do, it is hard to have 2 littles. It is hard to be pregnant while you have a toddler, right? So what can you do to set yourself up for success when the new baby comes? First of all, even starting right now, try to make sure that the bigger sibling, you have a boy? Yeah, my son. So try to make sure that your son, your older one, is still getting attention. A lot of times people will check in on you, they'll check in on the pregnancy, but they're not really checking in on him. And so it's really good for them if they hear you still talking about them. So if somebody says, "Oh, how are you feeling? Is the baby kicking? The baby this?" Maybe you just bring up your son. "Oh, do you know that so and so made this picture at preschool? Or do you know that so and so counted up to 5 today? Isn't that amazing?" And find ways to make him see that he's still important. And this also goes for like when the baby is immediately born, right? People are going to be bringing gifts and things for the baby, and they want to come over and they want to see the baby, and everything's about baby, baby, baby. So just make sure that you keep that in mind. Keep in mind that you are giving them the physical and emotional energy as much as you can while juggling the newborn. Um, you can allow them to help with the baby, give them some responsibility. So maybe their job is shaking the bottle. Or if you're breastfeeding, maybe their job is reading you a story so you don't fall asleep on accident while you're feeding the baby, right? Or maybe their job is getting you the diapers when it's time for diaper change. Can you remember what we need for a diaper change? I know we need a diaper. What else do we need? Wipes. You're right. Can you go get that for me? Keep them involved. The other thing, the last thing, and I've been talking about it a lot on my page, is make sure that the rules, whatever your house rules are, apply to everybody, including the baby, from the moment they come home. If you do that, it will make your older child feel more confident in the rules, in the boundaries that you've set. They're going to test less because they see you. If you set one boundary for your older son and then you allow the baby to cross it, then your older son is going to be like, well, I wonder if I just throw a fit like that, if I could cross the boundary, right? You'll have less testing of boundaries that way. So what are some examples of this? I don't know. I'm trying to think. Sharing. The baby cannot just take toys from the older one. What else? Oh, we don't watch TV while we're eating. Well, guess what? When you're breastfeeding, I guess, or when you're bottle feeding, TV turns off because, hey, baby, we don't, watch TV while we're eating. Whatever your boundaries are with your older one, just make sure that it's also with the younger one. And then my last thing is to just keep an eye out, because subconsciously, like not even intentionally, sometimes we will favor one or the other, and not like in a way of love and I love this one more, whatever, but just more in a way of like, you should be self-sufficient, or you should just do that on your own, or why are you making a big deal about this? You should know this already. Try to just be mindful of that and try to keep that. And I think we talked about it when I answered Marissa's question, which was the first question. You can watch it on replay. We talked about that, how like the rules being the same and the way that you speak to the people being the same should start no matter what the age. So like if the baby, oh, here's a good example. If the baby pulls the 6-year-old's hair unintentionally, of course, she's a newborn or he's a newborn. Big brother's holding the baby, baby pulls his hair, big brother's crying. You are not going to say, big brother, it's just a baby. She didn't mean anything by it. I know, you're okay. What you're going to say is, oh, baby, take the baby. Oh, baby, you can't pull big brother's hair. That's crossing his boundaries. We don't cross boundaries in this house, okay? You can do kind hands. Is your newborn fresh out of the hospital going to understand what the heck you're saying? No. No, it's not for the newborn. It's for the older one to see, I'm allowed to have boundaries. Mom will help me enforce my boundaries. The same rules that apply to me apply to my younger sibling, right? It's just the tone of the household, and it goes for everybody. So that seems to be the last of the questions list. So if you're watching live right now and you're like, well, you didn't answer my question, Questions are guaranteed to be answered if you ask them in advance inside of the community. So be sure to head over to the official Holistic Home Journey community. Link is in my bio on most places, but you can go to holistichomejourney.com. You'll be able to see the replay of this lesson, the replay of all the past lessons, Q&A sessions. And it's also the place for like judgment-free support. You can talk to me anytime in there. Loads of exclusive content, and that's just in the free version. There's also a VIP version where I do expert interviews. I just posted one today. Deep dives, growth club, which we're working on like trauma healing. So lots of cool stuff happening over there, whether you do the free membership or the paid membership. But I appreciate you being here, and I will catch you next time. Bye.